unapata ukiishi na watu kujudge actually.
Ule niliingia hivi hata ningekufa hiyo siku.
Boys must be.
What is foreign is acceptance?
I will ask if people are being given money to be
How you dress, venye unakaa, venye unafanya nini. Sio lishangi evidence. Unapata ukiishi na watu
Ngeni tumuone. Ule niliingia hivi hata
Because before we get into the human rights that a lot of us are struggling with, I think it's really good to recap what our weekend was like. And there was like very amazing things happening across the country, the continent. But one of the things that sat with us is obviously Harambee Stars beating Zambia on Sunday. Is it Sunday? Yes.
Yes, Sunday.
Yes. How did you watch the match?
Yes, I did watch the match. It was a football Sunday afternoon, of course, being a Harambee Stars fan and an Arsenal fan.
What a pity.
All through.
Congratulations on both your W's. Wewe kama fan wa Man U?
Yeah, me tulicheza game fiti manze, by the way. I'm not show anything. The scoreline doesn't represent football, by the way.
That is such nonsense. Can you imagine if like Harambee Stars said the scoreline does not represent us after they lost?
Well, they won, so that conversation can't be put on them. But then we are speaking about United and Arsenal.
The Kanye West, I guess we'll never know.
I guess we'll never know, right? But yeah, we are the winners at the end of the day. You know that as well, Cynthia.
Arguing with a Man U fan is hard.
It's difficult. I am a Man U fan and I'm choosing to be a better person today because kubali L. Kubali.
No, numbers don't lie, Cynthia.
Okay.
The numbers don't lie. Who had better possession? Victor?
But is that the same argument you used to beat us last season with Arsenal?
Well, we had a terrible season last season, but Arsenal didn't have a better season because you guys won nothing. But we can go back to that another time. But the numbers don't lie, Justin. We had a better game, we had better possession.
Yes.
We can go on about this, but
we won.
Yes, but one of the things that we want to center our energies on is Harambee Stars winning, because they're going to get 2.5
million now.
It's 5 million now.
Yeah.
They're up to 5 million.
Yes.
Around 4.5, I think.
Yeah.
5.
There are a couple of pledges that topped up the president's figures.
Yes. There was a 500K from Raila. Was it 500K?
Yeah,
it was 500K.
He
right?
promised 500,000.
And
a million our promise.
And a million. How ni kama Bahati sasa? Because Bahati promised them deal and
no, me, I'm not promising them money. Me, I'm promising them I'll cheer them. So just know wherever you go, that sound you're hearing in the background, that's me rooting for you, Harambee Stars. But before we continue, African Censored has a documentary out right now called Censored Identities, Living Between Fear and Freedom. In Kenya, identifying as a member of the LGBTQ+ community comes with a prize, and there's a deep-rooted stigma attached to it, meaning that people are not safe in their community, and how they are outed and how they are even harmed by the community is very extensive. So this documentary covers that, and we're gonna have the promo play right now.
It's very difficult for us to be able to impose on people that which they themselves do not accept.
Unapata ukiishi na watu kujudge actually.
Hata unatembea tu hivi mtu akuita sana, naona huyu mwanaume hivi naona.
Ngeni tumuone. Ule niliingia hivi hata ningekufa hiyo siku.
Boys must remain boys and girls must remain girls.
Then the issue of the foreign, they say, it is not foreign. What is foreign is acceptance.
I will ask if people are being given money to be gay, then a lot of people would be given.
Maybe because of your gender, how you dress, venye unakaa, venye unafanya nini.
Sio lishangi evidence that this is who I am.
welcome back. Watch that documentary. And I think also at the core of that documentary is empathy. It's a question of empathy and how our communities at large deal with people who are different from us. So speaking of empathy and community, we have seen recently the BBC had a documentary on child sex trafficking in Maimahiu, and this documentary had very harrowing details of kids who are right now older. I think a lot of them are a little over 18 right now, but when they were younger, they were sex trafficked. And the contention of around child sex trafficking as an issue in Maimahiu and the country arose. And we have seen this is a particular issue, not just in Maimahiu, but across the country. So we're going to focus a little bit on child safety. So before we even got into the statistics, do we think Kenyan children are safe? Me personally, I don't think Kenyan children are safe. Not in the way they are tear gassed, not in the way their education is not funded, and I worry that sometimes people don't think these things are connected. But I believe they are. But do you, Tom, think Kenyan kids are safe?
I think to a large extent, depends on how you look at it, okay? How I see it is if you're looking at it from like the outside and looking at the general safety of the future and the current well-being of children, I'd say no, they're not safe. That's because everything that is related to children is in some ways attacked, right? Education, safety of children, pedophiles are getting presidential pardons just because of reasons that only the president knows, but then these are people who defile children and they're being let out into the society. And people who are known defilers of children are also in the president's camp and they're well known. Defunding of education, email programs being defunded, children being abducted all over. I think Uncensored did a whole documentary on exactly this one issue, and I haven't seen anything done to solve that problem. I think if you're looking at it from that point of view, no, children are not safe in Kenya.
I will also go to Victor.
Yeah, I think over and above what Tom has mentioned, I think what we've seen is a fundamental failure of the state and even the society just to protect its most vulnerable citizens, our children. And I look at it from the online front also. And the digital space is such a murky space for children and young people in this country.
Could you kindly define a little bit of what that means and what that looks like?
We now live in a world where a lot of our children and young people actually have gone digital. I would say they have been digitized, but they're actually gone digital. We have more children accessing the internet. We have children accessing technology devices at a very young age. And often if you look at the design of these technology platforms that even us we use, they're very universal platforms. These platforms, an adult will use them, a kid will use them. The experience will be the same. It's not like we have a replica of sort of like YouTube for kids across different platforms like TikTok for children, Facebook for children, IG for children, Snapchat for children, or such things. And so what then happens is their children are then exposed to what harms we already see exist and are very pervasive on these platforms. And there's very little that is being done to actually protect children on the digital space. In fact, if anything, and that's why I say it's both a state failure and a societal failure, is even parents are actually the ones pushing their children to these digital platforms without oversighting. And so you've seen scenarios where actually people are using tech to sort of co-parent with them and get children busy if you don't want to be interrupted by children. And so that without sort of an oversight or a safeguard has actually exposed a lot of children.
This is where I feel like, personally, I am afraid. I'll not even lie to you. My brother has a daughter. His daughter is about 14 years old. And he was like, I want my kid to be like, because like my niece is very like outspoken. She loves to model. She loves to play with makeup. It's like, okay, I want my kid to have like her own channel. I almost told my brother, I was like, ati nani unaweka mtoto wapi? And he was like, this is my child. I have, and I'm also like, this is my niece. Like we were fighting over what that means for the kid. And I worry about the safety of the child, right? But also at the same time, the digital space is not created with kids in mind, even with the adults themselves in mind, because we've seen older people go through rabbit holes, end up on the other side of a conspiracy theory, and or like their minds are messed up with. So what does digital safety look like for kids? I'll even ask you, Tom, the same question, because I don't know if you worry about people who are younger in your family using technology in that way, as Victor's brought it up, and what does digital safety also look like?
Generation isn't working, and young girls who are underage are going live on TikTok, exposing themselves nudity just because of the same thing that's happening. Somebody, for lack of a better word, exploiting them for their own benefit. And these are mostly girls who are underage, very underage when they started doing this. But since they're vulnerable from poor communities, they have to do this because it's the only way they live. And some of them are being blackmailed, which is exactly, I think, the same thing that Njeri's documentary shows. But then that's the digital side of things. The most part of our documentary was about what's happening to girls on the ground. I think digital side of things, how can that be regulated? We risk over-regulation. I understand where those parents are coming from, right? You want your kid to blow up because speed is big, and he started when he was 16 years old, and you feel like your kid can stream his way into success by 18. But that opens up so many things for your child to see. And if you ask the world over, how old were you when you interacted with explicit content and how did it affect you? An overwhelming majority of people will tell you that they were exposed to these things at a certain age, and it even was grounds for other people grooming them. I know that I've heard stories of young girls who, the first person who showed them this content introduced them to something, and it was a gateway into abuse and all these other things. But also, this is where young girls or young boys meet people who groom them and then later on go to exploit them sexually in future. Even recruitment for some of these things happens online. I think it's such a thin line to walk, but it's one that Kenya should definitely walk, because increasingly these stories are becoming regular. But then, I don't know what you think, Victor.
Yeah. I mean, it's and I agree with you. It's a very thin line between regulation and appreciating what the digital environment is offering. But when you look at how the platforms work, and here I'll be very deliberate about the platforms, is their business model is profiting from our time on the platforms. And so what then happens is they make very limited investments in content moderation, as you alluded to the previous documentary around how TikTok's content moderation was failing. And it's not just TikTok. Across the platforms, there's very limited investment in content moderation. If you look at the conversations happening, say, in Europe and the European Union, they're having a lot of conversations around online safety. And even the UK, you see online safety conversations, because it's becoming more apparent that we actually need to have online safety conversations, and not just conversations, but also regulations on online safety. Because what happens is someone has created something which is addictive by design, is making massive profit from that platform, and so it is in their interest not to sort of regulate content. But you see, you as a consumer, you have a consumer right to get a good product or a good service. And so if you get onto a platform that you reasonably believe is for connecting with friends, it's for sharing my photos, and you end up getting harmed on that platform, they actually ought to take responsibility for that. And they need to make investments to make those platforms safe spaces for us, for all of us. But now if you look at the context of children, it gets worse, because if you look at our markets, because those guys look at us as markets, the African market is by far the leading market in tech in terms of consumership. Because if you look at, say, for example, TikTok, Kenya leads in usage. The other day we just had Kenya is leading in ChatGPT usage. So we are adopting technologies rapidly, but nobody's thinking about the safeguards. Think about the government's approach, and here looking at the executive side or the presidency. Their interest is in content monetization, but very little attention is paid into content moderation and platform integrity and platform safety. And so even the platforms will know these guys are just keen on monetizing. And so we have no duty, or we don't see an inordinate burden of just ensuring that the platform is safe, so long as they monetize. And at the end of the day, the goal of these platforms is to monetize. And so my view is we really need to have a reflection as a country, because we can't be the leading country in all this uptake of different technologies, but nobody's talking about how these platforms are safe. I'll give you an anecdote. 2 years ago, we did some research into TikTok at Amnesty. And one of the things we sort of found out, which is of course an open secret, is that it has a rabbit hole effect. You can never stop digging that hole. And so majority of the users are actually children and young people. And we got to speak to children who spend anywhere up to 23 hours a day on TikTok. But if you look at how the platform and the algorithms are built, it is actually addictive by design. And so you ask yourself, if someone creates something that is addictive, and they actually profit off that addiction of a child, I don't know if ethically, morally, legally, it should be wrong. But you see, our legal system does not protect our children against that.
Yeah, and I want to agree with you, because I feel like, first of all, Kenya being the leading consumer, it's like kidogo kierere yetu. Like, that's congratulations to us. It's really beautiful. But at the same time, if, again, as you said, if you're not looking into what the guardrails around this are, we're going to become the consumers who are also the addicts, who also need recovery. And all those things, like the reactionary part of it is very expensive. So just to bring it to the government doing nothing for obvious reasons, the Interior CS was in front of Parliament, and I think they were asking him about the situation in Nakuru, in Maimahiu, around these kids, around this documentary, and he said that this is a hoax, like the documentary itself is a hoax. BBC even came out with a statement very precisely to say that no one was paid, because that's what also the Interior CS said, or the people on that documentary were paid, but no one was paid. BBC also clarified that this information was given to the police, I think 3 weeks or like
5 months.
5 months, sorry,
March,
5 months prior. So if they had all this information, right? And the Interior CS comes out and says something so callous, is it, is it like a conversation of a disconnection between authority and, or them absolving themselves of the failure that they've already committed? And secondly, one of the most amazing things from this particular documentary was the precision of even the action that came after. That the lady in the documentary called Baby Girl, who's rescuing the kids, said she can't even report to the police because her own safety is in danger. She knows the people who are probably doing these things, but she can't say, because the moment she say, she'll be targeted. The kids she's helping out will probably be harmed, and they probably will fall into even more dangerous places, because there's no one to shield them. So
I think, you know, I mean, I watched the documentary as well as, of course, a million other people. I think the documentary is well past a million views. And it was so saddening to just see how this has been normalized. And you could get a sense that this is just routine business. The way you know, there's a way you'd anticipate that even them talking about children, or these madams actually dealing with children, would have some level of remorse, or a bit of even shame in doing it. It was so normalized. It was so, I mean, my mind was just going bonkers. But then now to come later and hear the Interior Cabinet Secretary say that the documentary was a hoax is actually just spite, because it basically waters down the lived experience of these ladies who went through this and the survivors. And the worst part, it emboldens the perpetrators, because you'll always know that there'll be what we call official deniability, that the state will deny. And if you think about it, as you can imagine the perpetrator on the other side sitting and saying, okay, fine, state has disputed this, we go on, it means that no action will be taken. But also there's another part to it. It actually is an attempt, and a strong attempt, to actually discredit investigative journalism. Because then what you do is you create a scenario where perpetrators of sexual violence, including child trafficking, feel emboldened because the state will sort of protect them. Because you see, that's a policy statement coming from the Minister of Interior. You'd not anticipate that any action will take place in the lower ranks, going to the police force, to all the formations of the police force. Then now you come and attack journalism. So what you're doing then is, should there be another expose? What you're telling the people is, those guys will always pay people to come up with stories. And so in one statement, we got two critical things punctured. The experiences of survivors were just watered down or thrown away. Perpetrators were emboldened, and journalism was attacked. And so if you think about it, it's sort of a government that is trivializing the experiences and very harsh experiences of people, and not just people, its most vulnerable citizens, children.
Yeah. The government just took an anime sword to literal lives of people. It's very dangerous. And I think, Tom, we were having this discussion earlier of like what it means to stop dissent and what that looks like. And I think there's something profound that you said, na nimesahau. So nitakuallow urudie.
I'm here to cover you. But what I said is, first of all, shame on the Ministry of Interior, shame on the members of Parliament who clapped when the Minister of Interior Governor said this in Parliament. And lastly, I don't know if you people noticed, but Susan Kihika, the governor of Nakuru, went on stage and lent her support to the documentary. Before that, the commissioner, the county commissioner for Nakuru, the guy who's literally the representative of Kipchumba Murkomen in Nakuru, said that this thing didn't happen. I'll address these three issues in that order. But number one, that's classic GOK since 2022. I think since the history of Kenya being a nation, you always defect and deny, even at the expense of young girls. It's clear that things are happening that shouldn't be happening, but the government will stop at no lengths to defend itself instead of solving the issue. Because from what the BBC said is that these people were interrogated without any legal representation, which means that they could have said things under duress, or what the government is saying is entirely false. But the Ministry of Interior does not care about that. So that's number one. What Kipchumba Murkomen said is false, absolutely false. But this is not the first time that the government of Kenya has denied things that are proven on camera. They denied the killing of Eric Shieni, which was caught on camera. They denied that, said that that was also a hoax, something that was documented and proven beyond any reasonable doubt. No one else had a gun, but they had every reason to deny that happened. What this means for us is that if journalists prove anything that could be very detrimental to the lives of Kenyans, as long as it shows that the government is inefficient in the most basic job, which is to protect its people, I can be 100% sure, and you can be rest assured, that the government will not stand by you. Didn't stand next to Boni, didn't stand next to these young girls when they were, as they are being exploited right now, and is not going to stand by anyone who's been killed, abducted. And I think, Justine, the profound thing that I said on the show, now to just roll back on everything that I said, it is not an overgeneralization. I think you should all be scared that the government is doing this. But I'm also very disappointed at the governor of Nakuru, Susan Kihika. Because as much...
Are you the governor of Nakuru?
Seems like she is.
I was just asking, because like those county, the people from a county were like, see, hatujaona governor hadi juzi. So yeah, that's,
US.
Yeah, just, I'm still confirming. Yeah,
maybe she's still governor, who knows? But I find it very obvious that what she's doing is self-preservation. She's the person who should be protecting these young girls. But she'd rather go on a stage and not criticize the Ministry of Interior for what it's doing, which is protecting pedophiles. She's doing everything but actually calling out Kipchumba Murkomen for what he's doing. And I find that to be classic self-preservation. He's using those girls to maintain this certain image of a young, very headstrong young woman who's supporting all women in her county, when in actuality what she's doing is just protecting her political patronage.
Yeah, and I think just linked to that is the question around Ministry of Gender. You know, the minister, when the documentary came out, mentioned that they'll form a multi-agency team. And more often than not, some of these things just remain that statement that multi-agency teams will be formed to investigate. We had, of course, the information that now we do have what we call the State Department for Children and Children's Services. I don't know how much they've said about this. And you see, when you look at how it came out that the BBC reached out to the National Police Service 5 months prior to the launch of the documentary. And tragically, these guys never took any substantive action. And so this is just a case where the state and the police abandon their duty. And it's just a blatant failure on the state. Because what do you mean, over 5 months, someone gave you evidence, and no action has been taken, and people have been picked miles across this country for a tweet and wound up dead. You know, so it's a clear case of abandonment of duty to protect vulnerable citizens, and if nothing changes, we can anticipate that this is just the new order of things.
Yep. Justine, before we continue,
Yeah.
these young girls who were being exploited and being pimped by these women who were caught on camera doing that, these girls, someone's raping them. And it's men who are walking scot-free. They could run into the hundreds because this has been happening for years. My question is, what's going to happen to them? I think that's a question that we're leaving hanging. What does that say about our society? Away from Jerry Mwangi's documentary, Jerry Migui repeatedly documents the sexual exploitation of girls, boys as young as 10 months old.
Even older citizens.
Even older citizens. But so much of the focus is on the documentary. I think this is exactly what GOK wanted to do. It wanted to steer the conversation away from the actual issues into the is it true, is it false? That's an area we risk staying in for a very long time, but these young girls were not doing these things to themselves. Men, Kenyan citizens of adult age, were doing this to them. But what's going to happen to them?
Maybe they mngeniachia wacha nisiseme kitu tena jela. But just to wrap up on this segment, I would just like to say, I believe Kenyan children are not safe. And Kenyan children are not safe because, oh, I am a bad person and I'm harming children. You could literally be a good person. But that does not mean that all the kids in this country are safe. It's just not true. And we've seen from that particular documentary, multiple things stood out to me. My Mahiu is a track county area, which means public transportation could be a very big issue. People can't just move from one part of the county safely to another part of Nakuru County safely. So that means if public transportation isn't there, people are using truck drivers. The truck drivers are exploiting them. That's a county issue. That's a societal issue. That's something that can be solved. And on top of that, it's a compounding factor. If a kid is adopted, because 3 of the girls in that documentary were orphans. If kids are adopted by their guardians, what does that mean for their personal safety in the homes that they've been adopted into? We need social workers who visit the homes to make sure that they are safe. We need relatives who are willing to stand up for the children when they're abused. We need communities to stand up against this very, very pervasive evil things that happen, not just from a grand scale, oh, it's a truck driver who is soliciting sex from a minor, but think about it as that is someone who probably has a family and is doing that to a child. So how safe is their own child in their own home? It doesn't always stop at the tragedy of an outsider thing happening. It's also the tragedy in the homes. A lot of kids in Kenya are neglected in their own homes. A lot of kids are abused and harmed by family members. So if their homes are not safe and their places they go to school, they're tear gassed. We've seen kids shot in their homes, like Bridget Njoki, she was 12. We've seen Julian Njoki, who was killed in a police station. Her grandfather is a chief. That did not shield her from state violence. We've seen Albert Ojwang taken from his home. These are people's kids. When we think about kids' safety, it just doesn't stop at like this grand, massive letdown of societal and morality failure. It starts with critical factors like safety in the home. It starts with how are guardians taking care of children. And one of the intersections that also is really important is that we should think of if your education is defunded, it means there are no school meals, it means those kids have to get food somewhere, it means they could get exploited for this. Njeri Wamigwi has documented this very much, and there's a whole terminology called sex for food, where someone is having sex with a child, raping a child for food. So if we have these conversations in isolation, we are never going to get solutions. We need safe school systems, we need safe homes, we need safe adoptive measures, we need social workers, we need so much structural improvement for us to get to a society where we say kids are safe. And I'm sorry I've gone on and on, but honestly I would like to say as the end of it,
I think Justine, are you surprised that the government is not taking care of its kids? I don't think I'm surprised.
No, if they can tear gas people for a play, surely.
I can sneak in one more example, because at times maybe it doesn't land well with many people seeing it just from a sexual violence point. But also, if you look at how state and even society, because I keep saying it's us also, it's the society that also needs to put pressure on some of these things. We have documented, and I just missed the stats, the number of cases of children who have died in schools, either from being caned by teachers who fell sick and the system was just broken, and by the time the child was being supported, far too late. We have had cases where kids burnt in a dormitory. To date, nobody knows what happened with that case. Gone. And it's not just one case, there are multiple cases. And so even in the context of safety of children in school, because we have, and I've read very many testimonies of parents who just wake up one day, you get a call that you need to pick up your child's body. Yeah, and this is someone you sent to school, understanding it's a safe environment for them to learn and to be nurtured, only to end up dead. And still, not a lot of action is seen on that. And so it just serves to show that there's a general failure in protection of children in the state.
Kids are a severely oppressed class, and even what you've said, it still points out to what happened, the story that you covered with Christine on what happened to Alliance Girls. And every student who went back to protest, they were being surrounded by cops instead of getting the predator out of the school.
No news on that, by the way, yet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I am actually very furious. I might look like I am composed, but me by then you may jam. So just to sum it all up, I believe even if you're a good person and you're out there and you're like, me, I love kids, I'll punch anyone who tries to beat up a kid or like harm a kid, your assumption that you're a good person does not, speaking out for them and making sure that they do not end up sex trafficked, they do not end up neglected in unsafe communities. Doing something is not just, I will beat up someone who harms a kid. Doing something is making sure we have policies from people who've been exploited because they do understand how the system fails them, and making sure that the lessons they've learned are now part of the protections that they get to receive.
Okay,
so
just to add on that, Justine, don't let the 2.5 million fool you into thinking your president is a good person.
Yeah.
That's just something you should
Kaini Rada, you will still be tear gas.
Yeah, he's laundered his reputation and his entire government's reputation using this chant tournament. But yeah, let's proceed, Justine. I think that's something that I badly wanted to put across.
Hey, I love that you badly wanted to put across that one of the things that I action process. So Tom will lead us ndo mjam kutoka side yake, because mimi hapa I don't think I can,
The Devolution Conference, a huge event Kenyan government, everyone shows up. Victor, I'm very curious to hear opinions on this. You probably know more about this because of your legal background than I can ever, because of your grasp of the Constitution. Many years on, to me, devolution just looks like devolved corruption and everything that's nasty within government, because nepotism was at the highest level. It's now even more pervasive in all 47 counties. Laundering of public funds, the same thing. Entrepreneurship, the same thing. But there's so much talk of devolution and what it could be. I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, every year when there's the Devolution Conference, we keep asking ourselves, we are meeting to talk and discuss, but hardly do we have any real progress to share and discuss. And when you look at how devolution was conceptualized, it was the devolution of not just funds, but also functions. Yeah. Because, you know, the other model of governance would be decentralization, which is you decentralize services. Like the national government has decentralized services. The way, say, for example, the registration of persons, like if you need to get an ID, those government offices within the counties are decentralized functions, but of the national government. Yeah. But here we had devolution, which meant we are devolving resources, we are devolving functions, and those functions already provided for in the Constitution on what we were devolving. So we'll devolve a couple. I think the schedule has almost 20 functions that have been devolved. Yeah.
Can you give us like examples?
So like healthcare, for example, was devolved, like provision of healthcare services. Let's use that example because it's the thorn in the flesh of many. Yeah. So healthcare is a devolved function. The national government retains the function of, say, national health policy and the level 6 national referral facilities. But every other thing is under the counties. And so counties then meant then that the counties receive resources for the hospitals, and they are able to manage the hospitals among themselves or within their counties. But then what has happened is, and it's one of the things that in many quarters we keep hearing debates, was it too soon to devolve the health function, for example? Yeah? And the question has arisen because of, it has now become a thing that services have actually deteriorated in the transfer of that function to the counties. We have seen scenarios where counties do not want to hire medical professionals, and even if they want to do, nepotism takes center stage as opposed to service delivery. But do remember that counties receive an allocation of funds from the national government, which is what comes from the national pool. They receive funds. Then it's allocated based on certain parameters. There were counties that even went further and were called the marginalized counties, which received a further allocation from something called the equalization fund. That's to say, you guys are behind, we want to bring you at par. So you'll get this share, but you'll also get an equalization fund. So a lot of funds had gone into these counties. I mean, there are counties that since devolution started, they've been doing 15, 20 billion a year. And if you look at the years since, you go and check where 200 billion shillings has gone in this county, there's nothing.
Most of it goes to paying salaries and allowances, right?
Yes, and so we transfer that bloated workforce that still bedevils the national government to the counties. And you keep hearing counties talk about ghost workers. In fact, if you read the manifesto of many governors, every time there's an election, one of the things they always promise is to clean up their public service rota or payroll, because there exist ghosts in those payrolls.
Just like, okay, I am very confused a little bit in the sense that when they give money, is money allocated per devolved sector, or is the money allocated like shikeni in your county yenu, and then you decide what the money goes according to the county's budget?
So, very nice question, actually. The county budget is something that you make as a county. All of us in Nairobi County, if Nairobi is our county of maybe residents, or even we say electorally voting, we have a duty to participate in the budget-making process of Nairobi County. But even prior to the budget, there's usually the County Integrated Development Plans, or what they call the CIDPs, which is often like a 5-year plan. In this plan, as a resident, Tom can say, as residents of Langata, we need a level 4 health facility. If it is adopted into the plan, then it means that following that, budget allocations have to follow that plan. That there's a planned level 4 facility that is to be put up in Langata constituency. The truth of the matter is, when you receive that tranche, it's supposed to cover all these things you put down in your plan through citizen and public participation. I remember for some years back, we used to laud how Makueni County was the lead in how they sat down, developed budgets together and whatnot. The thing is, there's very little citizen engagement and literacy on county budget making processes. In fact, even in this country, we have a lot of interest in the finance bill, which talks about revenue raising, than the budget, which talks about spending. And so the average person would know a lot about fundraising or how government is raising revenue, because most of the time that would pinch most of us, because either there's a tax here, a tax there. But people should actually dedicate as much effort to the budget making processes. But if you come back to the counties, now that we are in the counties, there's very little engagement. And so those CIDPs are developed with governors and their cocoons. And so they include anything that they want there and whatever they want to fund there. Often, because citizens have not been engaged, follow-up is also hard. Like if I asked you today, do you know the plans for your specific ward where you stay? It's very difficult to know because it's not something they share openly. And even when they do invite people, it's usually through the same channels and networks that they want to control, so that you don't come and confuse their process.
And speaking of wards, Justine, I don't know if you all share this sentiment, but I feel as if the function of MCAs was supposed to be representation to the lowest level. But I only hear about MCAs when it's impeachment or when it's government processes in counties where they need to get bribed for things to happen. It's not uncommon for you to hear people say that MCA amepotea 5 years. I don't know how, and these are the same people who are supposed to hold the governor accountable. Those are the only people who can hold these governors accountable, of course, aside from the Senate and these committees. But then how can regular Kenyans then hold these governors accountable? Because it's really, really shameful what they lined up at the Devolution Conference.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you look at how we structured our governance, and often many people in the streets refer to Article 1, we the people. Of course, the law provides, or what the Constitution provides, is you can exercise our power, our sovereign power through what we call a representative democracy, that we have representatives who represent us. And so then we structured that representation from the lowest level at a ward level with a member of county assembly, we have a member of parliament, all those guys. But if you look at how the average Kenyan understands the role and functions of an MP or an MCA, it's very different from what the law actually wants them to do. And that's why you see MPs are clinging on to CDF, for example, because that's how they show what they're doing. But the real work of an MCA or an MP is legislation. You know, and oversight. But the moment you give them money to start implementing things, they forget about their legislative mandate and oversight mandate to lining up to ask for handouts to do development.
But honestly, just to be fair to like some of the MPs and some of the MCAs, some of them are not reading. And this could like can go back to the conversation, like they were probably let down as kids, and then somehow they just weasel to the system and they go to the positions that they could get to. And now they can't read, and now they don't understand policy making. And so they have to contend their existence in the system with the delivery that they're supposed to do, and then that's the metric that people use to judge them. And kusema ukweli, it's a very, very flawed way of thinking, and I love that you pointed out that even Kenyans don't understand what the processes or the functions of these particular people have, so they don't know how to hold them to account.
So because it's those things that if and until when people are able to understand the functions of these officers, state officers, either an MCA or an MP, that is when you'll be able to sort of evaluate them based on their performance. Because you see, we often scorecard an MP. So if an MCA is coming back to us and saying, I need to be re-elected, what the majority of us would be looking at is how many funerals did they contribute money to, which roads did they put up, which is often not their duty. their duty should have been, I put in legislative interventions to ensure that perhaps then the market fees are this, and that, or this is what the county is doing in response to this, that, and the other thing. Because see, for example, let's talk about education, for example. Counties and governors and MCAs, we see them issue out bursaries. The only part in education that is devolved to the counties is ECD and the village polytechnics and some of those tertiary institutions at county level. They have no business in primary schools and secondary schools. That's a function of the national government, which are under the State Department for Basic Education. And the universities are under the State Department for Education. But now you see every political seat wants a fund so that they can issue out bursaries to look like they're doing something. And you see, now when we come back and scorecard our counties, for some people, they'd be happy that the governors consistently issued bursaries to them, having enabled them complete education. But in true reading of the law, that is not a function they should actually be doing. You see? And so what then happens is that mediocre show you saw on display at the Devolution Conference. A county displaying 3 fried fish.
The governor's chair.
And the governor's chair. There were some people displaying bottled honey.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Mukombero, Basharat, that guy.
Yeah.
Like, what? That is just bravery. You walked into that conference and you're just like, okay, to represent my county, I'll just put like 3 Mukombero. And like a glass of water just in case someone wants to engage. Like, that's crazy.
And
like, that's brave, but also that's crazy.
Yeah. And you see, I saw comments on social media, guys heaping praise on, say, like Governor Kangata of Muranga, and how, I think there was a display around the digitization of healthcare and sort of how they've done their universal healthcare model. Those are the things you'd expect to see at a county, because health has been devolved to you. You have all level 1 facilities up to, I think, the level 5 facilities. This shows how you have actually made these facilities work for the people. You have ECDs and you have the tertiary institutions with you. What have you done with them? You have some work to do around garbage collection, managing the environment, licensing of buildings. Show us what has happened in those respects.
Can I just say, is Mosiria like a devolved part of like Nairobi County to show us like garbage collection? I'm very curious, like, because he's like he's always somewhere talking about trash, and I'm like, I know the dustbins are the love of your life, but this can't be the entire what is going on with Nairobi County. So I love that you pointed out, like, there's more to how they're supposed to indicate what's happening.
Yes, there's a lot that was actually moved to counties. Even sports, for example, and maybe when we come to talk about...
sports is a devolved?
Yes, there's some level of sports that is devolved. Because it's the counties that are in charge of those local stadiums. The counties have sports policies that they should develop sports policies that nurture sports within their counties. Because you can't say, like, for example, your Singishu is the county of champions, but we have to wait for the national government to put up infrastructure to nurture sports talent in Wasingishu or Iten or any other place. So there's a lot that they need to do. And what happens is people only focus on what pushes their political agenda and gives them mileage politically, but at the expense of true development. Because my view, and when I studied devolution in school, one of the things that we had hoped for when devolution picked up well, it would have been people that have actually been a bit less concerned with who becomes president and being more concerned with who becomes governor.
Absolutely.
Because it was supposed to build people at the counties. And it was also a method of distribution of power. Because what we did have before that was a centralized system of government where the president had the national cake and would choose how to distribute it. And now you have a scenario where your county is receiving X amount of money annually. We need to ask them, what do you spend this money on? What have you built? So that you don't have a scenario where your county is allocated resources under the common pool, and your governor is still lining up at State House, asking for a road, asking for this, that, and the other.
I really have a question to ask. Away from the issue that you're pointing out, Victor. Justin, this is going to go to you directly because I can't answer this question by myself. are Kenyans to blame for the misery they're going through? I ask this because every time that I'm with people who are young, who are supposed to be speaking against what's happening right now, and we have alternative leaders who are offering maybe sticking to the constitution like Okiya Mtata is doing, or David Maraga, and him saying that the rule of law has to be upheld at all times, everything that the current president isn't doing. The one thing that I always hear young people say, at least the ones that I'm around, which might say something about me, they say, Okiya hanaka kitu, which is the same thing that you're saying. Handouts. We're used to handouts, and the idea of a leader in this country is somebody who's rich, number one, who's very generous, number two, and somebody who looks like they're well off. We tend to think that people who are successful individually, financially, are the best leaders. The best example is the Kasarani MP. What do you think about that? Do we put ourselves in this problem every 5 years?
I'm like, shout out to Kenyans for putting themselves in these positions every 5 years, as said by Tom. But just from my perspective, I think these things happen simultaneously. The complete misunderstanding of like the constitution and even just how everyday governance is supposed to work contributes greatly to how people see quote-unquote leaders and politicians in the participation of their growth and in like feeding back into the systems that are supposed to help them. And then there's the other part where Kenyans sometimes play into their own misery by selling their future, which is not even a word, like selling their present for something they can have now. Like they're selling their tomorrow for the today. Like we see it all the time. And that you're trading something bigger for something really small. And these two things exist in the same timeline, where there are people who don't know how government works, and then there are people who believe, like, because I don't know how government works, I should be getting something if you're going to ask me for my vote. And this thing is, it's parasitic. It feeds into who you are, how you play into your own misery, and then it becomes such a bigger problem than you would hope. But I feel like it's something you can deculturize. If you can sacrifice the 500 shilling for now, the border for your empowerment for now, I'm pretty sure an assembly line down the line as a job opportunity is a bigger sell for you. And you can make those arrangements. Most people are smarter than their governors and their MCAs and all their policymakers. I'll even be brave to say most people are smarter than their president, because people have an idea of what they want. We've seen it with what happened in, I believe it's Makueni County, where I think when Kivuta was the governor, a lot of his policies worked because he listened to the people. Like he put the people at the center. And I think maybe that's the same model that's being replicated in Murang'a, because your governor can be a good person with goodwill, but also you want to have some kind of contribution to the systems that you get to enjoy. And the reason some counties are working and some are not working is because the governor is probably like, I'll just give these people money and they will leave me alone. And there's someone who knows, oh, this governor is doing something wrong, and once you start raising your voice, you end up in the back of a Subaru. So these things exist with each other.
I think, and I mean, I do agree with you to a great extent, and it's how we have been conditioned to get fish rather than being taught how to fish. I think it's a political tool that is used, because if you look, and that's why when I started this conversation, I said we need to get to a point of either it's a political awakening or just citizens' understanding of what the roles of these people are. Because when you ask any member of parliament or any MCA how they go about doing their work, half the time they're solving societal problems. It's a funeral here, a wedding there, a school fee here, a medical bill there. That's what they spend their time on. And to your average voter, if this MP said no to all these demands, or this MC said no to all these demands, I'm actually going to legislate so that you have affordable healthcare, so that you have affordable food or anything of that sort that you're asking me for, they would actually vote out this person.
Yeah.
And it's not for anything, it's the lack of political education on what exactly do we need the government to do for us.
Yeah.
Because often we get people very short-sighted into what we call, like, I just need my short-term gain. So like today I have a need for unga and milk, so this 500 will do. But often people don't think about the tomorrow.
Yeah.
And how does this unga become available to me without needing to line up for a handout?
Yeah.
And my hope still is that, of course, with the so-called Gen Z awakening, these are things they would actually sort out for us.
Yeah.
One is, of course, there was the line around doing away with tribalism. The second thing would have been getting ethical leadership in place and accountable leadership also, for that matter. Because what we lack in this country is ethics and accountability. People don't want to be held accountable for any action. And in the absence of that, that is often what we call impunity. Because people wake up and choose to do whatever they want to do and do not expect a question from you. The society, and they know, because this country has almost been in a perpetual cycle of elections, you know, that towards the elections, give people money and with a promise that these things will, this money will come to you then after the elections. And we get into the same continuous loop. So my view is we really need just a political awakening, but it has to come with education. Because if you listen to how people interrogate some of these issues, you know, at times people say, you guys are privileged to have attended certain levels of education, which is not the case with many people in the country. And so we need to package this information for every cadre of person, not to say that people who didn't get to a certain level of education do not need to know. Actually, they need to know, because at every cadre we have a huge constituency of people who are voting. And so we need to get them understanding whether this is what happens. Rather than you getting an MP to contribute to your medical bill today, this is how you can get them to make sure that the social health system works.
But I think we're jumping the gun here. You expect people who are getting bribed in the National Assembly to legislate to your advantage. I don't know how that's possible, because the finance bill of last year is the best example of that. But then Nation did this whole expose over the past 24 hours. Last night, no, not last night, yesterday's paper, Sunday Nation, that the National Assembly is prone to a lot of bribery, and that a ton happens in these committees, in these chambers, even in presumably the offices of maybe committee leaders or even senators, to bribe them into legislating certain laws that may disadvantage Kenyans. I for one, believe that last year was it last year, 2023? 2024 finance bill, right? The 2024 finance bill, that was a huge exercise of bribery by the president into making sure that this bill goes through. This expose shows that it hasn't been happening just now. It's been happening for years, and for as low as 100,000. I'm actually very offended, because does my future amount to 100,000? Honestly, Mheshimiwa, I hate that word. But I don't know what you guys feel about this briefly. Justine, bribery in handouts, it seems like it's also our leaders. But they're so rich, man. I don't even get why. Like, your pay slip can run to over 700,000 every month. But
Wheezy begets Wheezy. It's not like it's like that money comes from somewhere. It's gonna figure out a way to leave your pocket. I don't think theft has like a limit, because the moment you open up yourself to theft, it's not enough. Like, you're just going to always want more, and that is a moral failing on a personal level, and then you just extend those tentacles further outwards. So if you can't change yourself and like change the culture that you have with the people around you, with your constituents, I think we are expecting very little in the political shift of like how we continue to engage with each other. And I am sorry to say, but we are almost running out of time. Actually, we kind of have to wind down. So Tom, kindly let us know how this devolution process.
Man, the devolution process is a heck lot, but we can't wrap it up. I think you put it correctly. It's a failing thing unless policies are actually, or people take care of the things they should take care of, instead of dishing out money. And by the way, fun fact, 100% of Turkana's employees, the public servants under the county government, are from one tribe. And this goes for the same for Elgeyo Marakwet, 97, 96, all the way to Akina Bungoma. I don't know, but from what I see, there are some grounds to justify what Turkana is at 100%, but some of these places, like you can't tell me that in Nyeri kuna people from different tribes. But then if you have 84% of the people coming from one tribe, it says a lot about you, when it should be at least 30% from a different tribe than the native tribe. Devolution, I don't know what you feel about this. Maybe people can let us know in the comments. But for my part, last week we spoke about something. You might remember that we spoke about the divestiture of Kenya Pipeline Company. Well, that's been halted by the court for the same reasons that we gave last week, that the public did not get enough time to participate in that process. But that's not the only thing that's been halted by the government, guys. I'm actually proud that the government for once made a good choice from where I sit, because they've halted the construction of the Nairobi-Mombasa Expressway, which, according to preliminary calculations, should have meant that every Kenyan, if you're supposed to put toll gates where people are supposed to pay for the operationalization of that expressway, over the 30 years, an American company would be contracted to construct these over 400-kilometer stretch of road with 4 lanes, and you'd have to pay around 15 shillings per kilometer. So from here to Mombasa, you'd almost pay 5,000 shillings, upwards of 5,000 shillings every time you drive to coast. Doesn't make sense. The government of Kenya, Treasury to be specific, halted this, and I think this, first of all, should be put up for public participation, something that the Nairobi Express says is a huge white elephant project, which recently, by the way, President Uhuru was very much implicated in eating from that basket. The tendering process was very much skewed. Same thing would have happened here if people don't get a chance to participate and every contract isn't put up for public scrutiny. But that's one good, it's like the government of Kenya messes up in one side, then makes a good choice on the other one, but you can't really trust them on the good choices they make, because when they cancel their Dani project, they are constructing another JKIA needlessly. But this continues to be something that unravels, Justine. I think maybe next week we'll see another mess up from the government. But yeah, I'm surprised I'm saying nice things about the government of Kenya this time.
Well, you might have to like shed skin after this. Yeah. So I'm going to give Victor an opportunity to have a closing statement regarding child safety and the devolution process and how we can just make sure that this country continues to function.
Yeah, I think on child safety, my view would be, or rather my closing would be, we need to be as mindful of what happens in the physical realm as much as what happens in the digital realm. A lot of what we see manifest in the physical space has actually been honed in the digital space. The grooming, the abuse starts online in many cases, then comes offline. You'd be surprised at how some of these people, some of the survivors rather, are actually gotten to by the perpetrators. It's actually through the digital platforms. And so we need to get people more conscious of what's happening on the digital spaces. Parents need to be more mindful of how much technology they're exposing children to, what they have actually literally given away to their children, or given their children away to, is the other way to put it. Yeah. So that they're able to understand that these are the dangers of this level of exposure. And if for me as an adult, it's a difficult space to be in, what about a child? Yeah. And how do I check on that? And so I think on this question, really, it's a massive call for digital literacy and people understanding what happens on the digital space, because also many people don't understand really how platforms work. They just think someone offered them a space for free to enjoy, but that person is benefiting. And given that you're using the platform for free, it means they definitely have to have a massive financial benefit. I think that's what I would say on that in closing. And also, I think it would be an injustice not to actually end on that children front, but just calling on the government to ensure that the perpetrators in the Mai Mahiu case and any other case are actually brought to book and action is taken on these people, because we cannot keep quiet and bury our heads in the sand and embolden these perpetrators, because this vice or this activity and it's actually an international network of exploitation of children will continue to thrive to the detriment of our society. And you can imagine the children that we are bringing up in our society who we have willfully exposed to all this violation. So the government has to bring these people to book and take all necessary steps, not just justice, but also rehabilitation of the survivors, through psychosocial support, medical support, to just bring these people back to society in a proper way. On the counties, I think Kenyans really need to understand the importance of devolution. I think we need a moment to reflect and ask ourselves, why did we bring the devolved system of governance into our country? And once we sit and understand that, then we can actually understand what then we need to make, what decisions we need to make coming into the next elections and coming to how we frame our devolved system of governance. Because I think there's a huge disconnect between what we promised ourselves in the 2010 Constitution and what the reality is, as is being implemented currently in terms of our devolution. So I think we need to go back and think, why did we bring this system of governance and why is it failing, and understand the reason for the failure and how we come out of this. Because my view is that it's a perfect system of governance if it is gotten right, but it is also the worst if it is gotten wrong, and we've actually seen how low it can get in its worst form. So I think that's what I would say on that, and really urge people to really understand the importance of some of these things and read the Katiba beyond what was read for us as we got the Katiba in 2010.
Justine, before we continue, you said so much about what Murkomen said, but I think it's very important to put out the official statement of the BBC regarding Murkomen's comments. He said, for clarity, the BBC says, for clarity, none of the contributors featured in this documentary were paid off, offered payment, or coached in any way. As clearly stated in the film, the survivors of abuse who were interviewed were all over 18, very important, and recounted experiences of abuse that occurred when they were underage.
So, Tom, are those your closing words that are also echoing the same? Or
no, to be fair, it's very important that aside from amplifying in criticism what the ministry is saying and what the government is saying to reduce this very big problem, the BBC statement, which is obviously accurate with all the evidence available, is very important to amplify as well.
Yes. So thank you so much, Victor. Thank you, Tom. My last thing today is, as much as we are struggling and we are pushing back against impunity and zero accountability, we are also celebrating the wins that Kenyans have made. And this entire last 6 days have been very beautiful for sports fans. As a Faith Kipyegon has the second fastest time in the 3,000 meters race. She won the Diamond League race. Beatrice Chebet came in second. Malkia Strikers are the African champions for volleyball. They're going on to the international championships. We're rooting for them to win in Vietnam. And Harambee Stars obviously did impeccably well. Julius Yego won gold. I think he went first place, I think.
Yeah, diamond.
Since the last time he won was in 2016, which is calling Yego today because he threw that javelin. From 2016, it landed in 2025. So congratulations to Julius Diego. So that's where I'll wrap. And thank you so much for joining us on The Big Picture. Today with me in studio has been Victor Ndede and my co-host,
Tom Mukwana.
And me, Justine Wanda. From us, we say good night. And we'll leave you with a trailer for the documentary covering very important issues on censored identities, living between fear and freedom.
It's very difficult for us to be able to impose on people that which they themselves do not accept.
Unapata ukiishi na watu kujudge actually.
Hata unatembea tu hivi mtu akuita sana, naona huyu mwanaume sivyo hivi naona.
Ngeni tu muone. Vile niliingia hivi hata ningekufa hiyo siku.
Boys must remain boys and girls must remain girls.
Then the issue of the foreign, they say, it is not foreign. What is foreign is acceptance.
And we'll ask, if people are being given money to be gay, then a lot of people would be given.
Maybe because of your gender, how you dress, venye unakaa, venye unafanya nini.
Sionishangi evidence ati this is who I am.
It's very difficult for us to be able to impose on people that which they themselves do not accept.
Unapata ukiishi na watu kujudge actually.
Hata unatembea tu hivi mtu akuita hasa, naona huyu mwanaume sijui nini maana.
Ngeni tu muone. Vile niliingia hivi hata ningekufa hiyo siku.
Boys must remain boys and girls must remain girls.
Then the issue of the foreign, they say, it is not foreign. What is foreign is acceptance.
I will ask, if people are being given money to be gay, then a lot of people would be given.
Maybe because of your gender, how you dress, venye unakaa, venye unafanya nini.
Sionishangi evidence ati this is who I am.
It's very difficult for us to be able to impose on people that which they themselves do not accept.
Unapata ukiishi na watu kujudge actually.
Hata unatembea tu hivi mtu akuita hasa, naona huyu mwanaume sijui nini maana.
Ngeni tu muone. Vile niliingia hivi hata ningekufa hiyo siku.
Boys must remain boys and girls must remain girls.
Then the issue of the foreign, they say, it is not foreign. What is foreign is acceptance.
I will ask, if people are being given money to be gay, then a lot of people would be given.
Maybe because of your gender, how you dress, venye unakaa, venye unafanya nini.
Sionishangi evidence ati this is who I am.